This is Ruben from the Freaks, and you're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America.
Hola, bienvenidos a Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Mi nombre es Román Tamayo y es un placer estar con todos ustedes. Continuamos con este viaje visitando a nuestras bandas favoritas, personajes favoritos de esta escena enfocada en el stoner, doom, la psicodelia. Y el día de hoy tengo el placer de tener a una leyenda viviente. Él es Ruben Romano, ha tocado en muchas bandas, Manchu, Nebula, también ahora en los Freaks, y bueno, antes de Manchu también tocó en una banda de punk. ¿Cómo se pronuncia? ¿Virulence?
Se pronuncia Virulence.
Virulence, perfecto, gracias Rubén. Bienvenido al show, ¿cómo estás?
Todo bien, muchas gracias. Todo acá, todo bien.
Todo bien, qué bueno, me da mucho gusto. So the first question, of course, is how you get involved in music in general. Do you remember your first contact with music? Maybe, I know, rancheras or rock and roll. So tell us about the beginning. How start everything?
Okay, a ver, voy a tratar de hablar en español, okay? Pero si me tranco, voy a cambiar de nuevo en inglés, porque no puedo hablar tan bien, tan rápido. Bueno, sabe, vamos en inglés, es más fácil. Okay. The first time I was introduced to music really was my parents left for a weekend together, and I was sent to stay with my cousin and my aunt. And he was a little bit older than I was, so the first day that we went out, we rode bikes to his friend's house. And that's where his friend's mother worked for a company called Columbia House. And I don't know if you know that in Mexico or not, but Columbia House used to be like where you would spend a penny and get 10 records, but then you'd have to spend like $20 to buy 5 records after that. It was like a weird contract thing. So his mother worked for that company, and she always had all these records released or pre-released So this guy had them, you know. So I mean, we're talking things like, say, the Cars, say like Led Zeppelin, you know, like early kind of, well, late '70s, you know, radio stuff, you know, the rock stuff. So my cousin would go there with cassette tapes and record all these albums before they were released. And I was only like maybe 9 years old, and I would sit and just watch TV and listen to these records. And then I got kind of bored, and I went into a room and there was a drum set there. And I think that the record that they were recording was Zeppelin 4. And, you know, it starts off with the song Rock and Roll. So I kind of, you know, had that drum beat in my mind just by hearing it as a kid. And then I walk into a room and there's a drum set there. So, you know, I started kind of messing with it. I go back and I asked a friend, hey, can I play your drums? And I kind of figured out how to somewhat kind of play the intro to Rock and Roll. It kind of made sense.
Wow.
And that's kind of it, you know. That was, okay, this is cool. I think I need to get a drum set. And that's kind of how it started for me. So I guess Zeppelin's Rock and Roll was probably the first drum beat that I kind of tried to figure out.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of all started, man. It all snowballed from there.
So how old are you when you start to discover this kind of music and you decide to you want to play drums?
You know, that was about that time. I think I was 9 years old, you know, and my cousin, I think he was like maybe 12 years old, you know. So your older cousin, you're like, oh my God, this is the coolest guy ever, you know. He's my cousin, and because my mother was a disco queen, you know, like we would go to the stores and we'd always buy 7-inch records, you know. Ever since I can remember, my mom was always buying 7-inch records. I think her first record was Hang On Sloopy by the McCoys, and she claimed that was like her favorite song when she was young. So I still have that 7-inch with me. So my mom was always kind of pushing music, even though it might not have been the genre that I'm into now, but she was a total disco queen, and I totally have all of her 7-inch singles still with me. So I have a big disco collection in my record collection. They're very kind of dear to me, but so I always kind of had music there. But that one time when they left for a vacation, I think they were on like a anniversary or something, and I stayed with my cousin, is when I really kind of figured it out. And then the same cousin was like, hey man, turn off that radio station and put on this radio station. And I believe it was like KLOS or KMET, which were the big rock stations at the time. And I think the very first song that came on was a song, oh my gosh, Train by Ricky Matlock was in the band. I can't remember the name of the band. I can't believe it. But yeah, that was it, man. You know, he switched the radio dial to a rock station, and I had just played drums, you know, and you know, but then Van Halen came along, and Van Halen 1 was what really kind of blew my mind. I was a big Van Halen fan. First 3 records, Women and Children, first best record. After that, I'm done.
And well, when you start to play the drums, I guess you want to try something like the big rock stars, maybe, you know, John Bonham and all these guys. But when you decide to start to play like a more dairy music, punk music, or when you get involved in this genre, and how was the moment when you start to change to stoner rock, or well, stoner rock born with you guys basically. So how was the process? I mean, you started the punk, and the next stuff, it was the stoner rock. So tell us that process.
You know, I mean, I think it was just growing up in certain eras, you know, being born at the right time, really, you know, because I was born in '69, you know, and you know, I was able to kind of be young enough to have like the early Led Zeppelin stuff, you know, and then go into like, say, the Van Halen stuff, you know, and by that time I was playing drums and just with my headphones to records and stuff. And then when I got to about like, say, 13 and stuff is when, you know, things like Black Flag and Circle Jerks started kind of, you know, I lived a little bit south of Los Angeles, and so we caught wind of Black Flag and stuff. So junior high school for me was when punk was kind of starting to take hold in a way. And And then, the 80s kind of also had crap music. So I was just involved with anything that was music. If I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, I didn't like it. Um, and then one day, the doorbell rang, and I'd met Mark Abshire earlier. We ended up like hopping on a bus and going to the beach together, and that's how I met Mark. And I think again we were like maybe 13, and then a couple of years later when we got into high school, my there was a knock on my door at my parents' house, and I opened the door and there was Mark Abshire standing there with Ken Pucci and with Scott Hill, and I think they knew that I played drums because in junior high school I did do it's pretty funny I'm telling you this, but there was a air guitar competition. So, I took part in this little, I was in eighth grade, and it was kind of an event when, they did an air guitar competition. So we put together something with some friends, and we ended up getting second place because we weren't the popular kids. They won. They did the Clash, and we did What I Like About You by the Romantics. But what's funny is that I knew how to play the song. So when we did our little performance, we really kind of killed it because I played it spot on. And but like I said, we weren't the popular kids, so we got second place. But because of that, I think it's when Mark knew I played drums and stuff. So when I was, I think, sophomore, my second year of high school is when they came and knocked on the door, and they said, "Hey, we're starting a band. You want to play drums?" And I was like, "Okay," because they were all a little bit older than I was, So again, here's this little kid that I am, and I'm looking up at these older guys, going, "Wow, these guys are cool," So I go, "Okay," and they had all their stuff in the car, so we went up into my bedroom and just kind of started jamming, and that's when I really got introduced, because Scott is a big audiophile, man. Like, his record collection is so insane. And he's the one that would kind of, mentor and kind of like, oh yeah, like this band over here versus this band over here sucks, but these guys are good, but these guys are bad, and being influential, basically whatever Scott said, I took is true, all right, cool, man. I'll listen to Blast. Yeah, that's awesome, So that's kind of when it kind of went into, say, the more punk rock thing, and that was the band Virulence, that we ended up doing there. And then life kind of happens, and then you get Scott was so into Blast, and we all were, and they're wearing Black Sabbath shirts, so Scott's like, well, let's dip back into Black Sabbath, and sure enough, that's kind of the blend of the punk rock and this new stoner rock stuff. We wanted it to be heavy, and then it was like start slowing it down. So I don't know, man. I can't sit there and really say there was one thing that made it happen. It was just the same process of evolution as you're growing up and getting inspirations from different things. That's probably what really kind of turned it into what it was. So just a gradual progression into, good music, and then getting inspired by it and trying to emulate and trying to do your own thing.
Yeah.
I guess it's like for everybody,
Hey, hello, I'm Gabriel from Black Rainbows and Heavy Saxons Records, and you're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America. Bye-bye.
Hola, this is Mario Lally from Yawning Man and Fatso Jetson, and you are listening to Doomed and Stoned Latin America. Stay well.
Regresamos aquí a Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Estamos platicando con el legendario Ruben Romano de los Freaks, Nebula, Manchu, Virulence. Y pues bueno, vamos a desmenuzar esta primera parte de la entrevista. La verdad es que nos la estamos pasando bomba. Primero, pues bueno, la pregunta obligada es, como a todos nuestros invitados, su primer acercamiento hacia la música. Y nos cuenta que bueno, un fin de semana, cuando él tenía por ahí de 9 años, sus papás se fueron y lo dejaron con su primo y su tía. Y pues bueno, dice que pues no es... ellos conocían a un amigo, tenían como un amigo, y el primo pues iba ahí le dice, vente, vamos a cotorrear, ¿no? Entonces la mamá de este compa trabajaba para una compañía que era... como que tú te suscribías, tú pagabas cierto dinero y te llegaban discos, ¿no? Y como que era un gancho y después iban subiendo los discos y era como mes a mes o semana a semana, no sé cómo era, pues te iban llegando discos. Entonces, pues esta señora tenía discos promocionales de bandas que todavía no salían al público, y pues él iba con su primo por ahí y agarraban unas cintas y copiaban los discos y se los llevaban. Y entre esas bandas pues estaba obviamente Led Zeppelin y pues bueno, The Cars y otras por ahí. Entonces pues se ponían ahí a escuchar los discos, y en lo que se estaban copiando pues también estaban dándose un poco el cáliz, veían un poco la tele. Y un día estaban en eso y vio una batería y de repente empieza a sonar rock and roll de Led Zeppelin, ¿ya se acuerdan? Con el intro del John Bonham, así refándose al máximo. Entonces dice, pues a lo mejor yo puedo tocar ese intro, ¿no? Entonces se va a la batería Rubén, lo intenta y dice, wow, esto está chido, a mí me late, como que esto tiene onda, tocar la batería es lo mío. Entonces, pues bueno, en esos años, cuando él tenía 9, empieza a descubrir la batería. Su primo tenía por ahí de 12 años. Entonces, pues bueno, intentó empezar con esto de la batería. Dice que su mamá siempre lo apoyó. Su mamá era fanática de la música disco, una disco queen, así le llama Rubén a su mamá. Y pues bueno, tenía muchísima música de los 70s ahí siempre a la mano, siempre bailando. Entonces pues bueno, su mamá también fue una pieza muy importante que pues bueno apoyó a Rubén. Y pues bueno, las primeras como estaciones de radio que empezó a escuchar fueron por su primo. Él le decía como por dónde moverle, y entre eso pues descubrió al Van Halen. Y pues bueno, también sé que fue algo que le cambió la vida sin duda. Y pues bueno, después le preguntamos a Rubén si nos podía platicar un poco ya en forma cuando empezó a descubrir esta música pesada, el punk, el metal, y en qué momento se empezó a gestionar esto que hoy conocemos como el stoner rock. Él es uno de los padres prácticamente. Entonces, pues bueno, dice que él tuvo fortuna porque nació en el 69, donde pues había bandas como Led Zeppelin, Van Halen y otras. Y pues bueno, tenía como toda esta música fresca a la mano. Y del otro lado, pues también con el paso de los años llegaron los 80s y bueno, fue toda esta generación del punk. Dice que tenían a Black Flag, Circle Jerks, y bueno, él iba en la Junior High School cuando estaban estas bandas y eso, él las estaba escuchando y era pues lo más increíble, ¿no? Entonces, pues en esos 80s él escuchaba lo que podía, lo que se dejaba, lo que encontraba, él exploraba de todo. Y dice que pues bueno, en esos años conoció a Mark Shire, que pues bueno, es un personaje muy muy importante, tanto para Nebula como para Manchu, Virulence. Él tenía 13 años cuando conoció a Mark, y pues bueno, nos cuenta una anécdota muy curiosa, ¿no? Que había un concurso de guitarra de aire en la escuela, entonces él participó justamente y dice que el primer premio se lo llevó a alguien que hizo una de The Clash, él se llevó el segundo premio, pero bueno, ahí fue como el encuentro donde se conocieron prácticamente. Entonces un día, cuando él iba en el segundo año del high school, Mark toca la puerta, bajan sus papás y estaba ni más ni menos que Scott Hill de Fu Manchu junto con Mark, y le dijeron como a Rubén, oye, sabemos que eres baterista, estamos haciendo una banda, ¿te gustaría llamear con nosotros? Y Rubén pues obviamente era mucho menor y dijo, sí, venga, claro, vamos a rifar. Entonces dice que se la pasaron en su cuarto y empezaron a descubrir pues muchas bandas, a llamear. Dice que a Scott Hill, pues bueno, que ahora siempre ha sido el líder de Fu Manchu, él le enseñó muchísimas bandas. Dice que es un audiófilo y tiene una colección de discos increíble, muy muy grande, y lo considera su mentor en esto del punk. Y pues bueno, juntos Mark, Scott y Rubén hicieron Virulence, que lo pueden googlear por ahí, es pre-Fu Manchu. Y pues bueno, en este momento es como nace el punk y como empieza su carrera musical Rubén, yo creo que sin imaginar lo que iban a lograr ellos y que iban a cambiar el mundo justamente. Y pues bueno, dice que en ese tiempo escuchaban también Black Sabbath, que era pesado, lento, lento, más lento. Y pues bueno, él dice que no puede decir exactamente cómo nace el stoner rock porque pues todo fue un proceso, fue una parte de evolucionar, de crecer conforme ibas descubriendo bandas, sonidos, influencias. Se iban inspirando, iban haciendo lo que podían, lo que creían, sin ponerle etiquetas. Entonces, pues esa es la respuesta de Rubén acerca de cómo nace esto de los riffs lentos, pesados y psicodélicos. Así que, pues bueno, continuamos nuestro viaje trepidante aquí en Doom and Stone. Trépele, gózala.
Hey everybody, this is Ben Ward from Orange Goblin here. You're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America. Cheers.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell us about the first shows of Fu Manchu? I mean, stoner rock now is super popular. Everybody knows the word. It's super popular around the world. But in those days, how was the local shows? Because maybe you, Cayuse, Drowning Man, maybe are the only bands there. But tell us about the beginning of this stuff.
Well, it was kind of weird because we were trying to do what we were doing, and it wasn't the normal thing like it might be now. So, people didn't know what to think of us, really. When we would play a show, there's a couple of great venues that were coming around, and that's when the whole kind of Seattle sub pop thing was happening too. When we finally decided to change from Virulence into Fu Manchu, there was a couple of changes in the band. A couple of people left, and then a couple of guys came in, and that's when I came up with the idea of like, hey, you know what? It's kind of getting different now, and there's different people. Let's change the name of the band and start something, fresh. And that's when Fu Manchu kind of, started. And we would get these shows, local little punk shows with other local bands and all that kind of stuff. But we weren't normal at the time. And, people didn't understand what we were doing and they didn't really get it. But the one person who was always like, yeah, was the old drunk guy in the very back of the bar. He was the only one who kind of got what we were doing because, he was kind of probably reminiscing and like, oh yeah, man, when I was young, I used to listen to stuff like this, but the people that were there to kind of see the whole show as a show were like, that was interesting, and, it was kind of almost disheartening because we were, sweating our balls off and people were just scratching their heads. And it took a while, but, I think that's kind of was a good thing, because we were introducing something that people weren't used to. And now look at it now, it's everybody sounds the same. Which is a good thing, man. I mean, it's a good thing, because it shows that like, yeah, the same thing with us, like we liked all these different kinds of music and we're trying to, we're inspired by it and we're trying to emulate it and stuff. So, it's good that everybody kind of does have a similar thing because it does create a community. So it's all good, man,
Yeah, definitely. You create the foundations for this big community around the world, and we really appreciate. Thank you so much for that. And well, after Fu Manchu, you start a new band called Nebula. So tell us how you met Eddie Glass. How started the project? You start with Mark, the band. So tell us about Nebula right now.
Mark is a key player for me, man. I'm really thankful for knowing him, and I have a total unconditional love for one of my longest friends and stuff, because it was always Mark who was kind of in front of everybody else on certain things, I mean, he was the first guy to show up to school with a big mohawk and, was the first guy to like dye his hair blue and,
Yes.
So Mark was like, that guy is so cool. So, I met Eddie Glass through Mark, and that's when Eddie, I think Mark was renting a room in this guy's house and the guy was friends with Eddie. They had gone to school or whatever, and that's how I kind of met Eddie. And Eddie, in Olive Lawn had just finished I think they just disbanded. So Eddie was kind of free, and when I met Eddie, he was like, yeah, this guy's kind of cool, we would hang out. I heard some kind of 4-track demos of things that he did, and I was like, whoa, man, well, you can actually play leads on your guitar, this is what our band needs, So Mark did the introduction to Eddie, and then I kind of pushed to get Eddie into Fu Manchu. Scott wanted to keep it a 3-piece. And I was like, yeah, I know it's cool as a power trio, but, we're going to be able to add in a couple of leads that are going to, really kind of sparkle this stuff, and it worked out great, and the recording sounded good and everything was cool. The only thing that happened was, like personalities, they just didn't really mesh too well as we were rolling along and that's okay. Cause that happens. But because of that, like Scott and Brad, they're really kind of mellow guys and, not the most social of guys, which is okay. Like after a show, they'd be like, okay, cool, man. Like, let's go back to the hotel and just, relax and watch a movie or whatever. Yeah, I was young and I was like, yeah, but you know what? There's still a whole party going on over here, man. Let's go and hang out with some of the local folk and get into some fun stuff, So different personality types, both Eddie and I, we were a little bit more, I think, outgoing and wanted to kind of experience the different places that Fu Manchu was starting to travel to. So that's kind of where the kind of split started happening, and then I kind of, started getting a little bit more like higher energy, like back into like, a punk set of mind where it was like faster music, more exciting, and Scott was like, well, we want to bring it down and be more like, quarter notes and slow it down, and me playing drums, I was like, oh, Dad, I just don't want to play 1, 2, 3, 4, and as much as I love AC/DC, I just don't want to do that. I want to be more like Keith Moon and be able to have fun and just go nuts. So that's kind of where the personalities kind of split. And then that's when me and Eddie kind of decided, hey, we could get a little bit more energetic and let them get a little bit more heavy. And we just kind of split ways. And that's when we started Nebula. And then that happened. So, I think it was at the time, splitting with Fu Manchu was kind of rough for me because it was the only thing I knew, and Scott and I had been like really good friends all that time. But, kind of reflecting on it now, I'm kind of glad that things happened the way they happened. And, there's always a path that you got to move forward on. And I did. And, Nebula happened and that was fine. We had a great time. We had another good long run. So Eddie was, Mark is the reason for it all, really.
With Nebula, you changed everything for a lot of people. I'm a big fan of Nebula. So when I discovered you, everything changed. It's like the band who played the classic heavy rock from the 70s, but also psychedelic and heavy stuff. So it was a really good combination. So with Nebula, you live a lot of adventures. You went to Europe, even to Argentina with Los Natas. So do you remember this tour with Los Natas and your tours in Europe? Can you tell us a little bit about this?
It was the right time for Fu Manchu to split the way we split, because it kind of left Eddie and I in a position where, well, we could still be active and still, we just, as long as we don't stop and don't waste time, let's just kind of step to the side, but stay on the same track. And, we went up to Rancho de la Luna and we recorded some demos that ended up becoming the Let It Burn record. So we just kind of never really stopped. And I think that's what helped the momentum kind of continue. And that's what also kind of helped us to be able to start venturing off into other parts of the world and tour. Because we were, like I said, we were kind of like the more, I don't want to say anxious, but the more like, we had like, what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, we were just more on like, okay, well, put it this way. We were more on the uppers while everybody else was on the downers, We had this excitement that wanted to kind of really just not be bored and yeah all the time. So that ended up, just kind of moving forward easily. And then we got into touring. We got a cool booking agent, and then he introduced us to a booking agent in Europe. And then, what really happened was a mistake. We were supposed to be on some record label called 0 Hour. And while we were just beginning to do a recording for them, and we signed a contract, and they gave us a bit of a budget, so we were able to get some new equipment. And then we went into the recording session. We started recording with Jack and Dino because Eddie's connection with Sub Pop was from O, who recently just passed away. Rest in peace, O. You're so cool. So O was a connection for us because Eddie was in a band with O, And then once that kind of Sub Pop thing happened, then that's when, things really did open up for us to be able to travel and tour and go to different places. Mudhoney also, they kind of took us on tour and mentored us a little bit. So Mudhoney once went down to Brazil, and I guess the Brazil promoter asked him, like, what's another band that I should bring down here? So Mark Arm told him, no, you should get Nebula to come down. So that's how we were able to get down into Brazil. But before that, a buddy of mine called me and he goes, hey, there's this band from Argentina that's in Los Angeles right now, and they're recording a record. And since you're from Argentina, he's just asked me if I could go and hang out with them or if I knew where they might be able to stay. So I said, hey, they could stay with me. So they came over to where I lived, and that's how I met the Nadas guys. And then when they found out they were going down to Brazil, that's when they extended an introduction to a promoter for Argentina, and we went down there and we did some shows with them down there. But really, it was those guys saving money, coming up to the States to record. I think they recorded with Dale Crover. And yeah, and then our manager at the time said, "Hey, can you maybe help these guys out because they're from a foreign land in your country and you're from their country." So that's kind of how I met the Nadas guys, and everything kind of fell into place. But we were nonstop. We toured so much. It was awesome. Europe, the States, Europe. We made it to Japan once. We made it to Australia a couple times. Down to South America. So the trick on that was that that's what we wanted to do, and we wouldn't stop doing stuff. We kind of said yes to everything. You guys want to come down here? Yes. You guys want to fly over there? Yes. So we never really said no, and it kind of was a good thing, and it gave us all this experience and adventures, and I'm pretty stoked. Life was good.
Hi, I'm Peter from Lowrider, and you're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America. Rock on.
Estamos de regreso, seguimos platicando con el legendario Ruben Romano. Ya escuchamos una parte de su paso por Fu Manchu, cómo se formó esta banda, también cómo surge el stoner rock, cómo fue parte de ese proceso. No nos adentramos tanto en las bandas como en Fu Manchu, Nebula o The Freaks, porque nos llevaría horas, créame, así que lo vamos a ver de manera muy general, preguntas muy generales, y seguramente haremos una segunda parte donde le vamos a preguntar ya más cosas. Si usted le interesa, quiere saber algo más sobre la carrera de Ruben Romano, sobre Fu Manchu, The Freaks o Nebula, pues bueno, nos puede escribir en Doom and Stone Latinoamérica en Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. También puede escuchar otras transmisiones a través de Spreaker, Spotify o YouTube, Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Pero bueno, continuemos. Le preguntamos, en aquellos años pues obviamente el stoner no era nada popular como lo es hoy en día. No había festivales, es más, ni siquiera existía el término. Entonces, ¿cómo eran los shows locales? ¿Dónde tocaban Fu Manchu o lo que sería Fu Manchu, Virulence? Entonces, pues bueno, dice que ellos no estaban haciendo algo normal, ellos tenían como la intuición de que estaban haciendo algo muy peculiar. No sabían si era bueno o malo, solo lo estaban haciendo, seguían su instinto. Y la gente ni siquiera los notaba, no entendía qué era, no entendía qué estaba pasando. No era metal, no era punk, no era Led Zeppelin. Entonces, ¿qué diablos estaba pasando por ahí? Entonces, pues bueno, dice que en esos años, pues Seattle explotó, la sub pop, el grunge, puso en boga muchas bandas, cambió el panorama, el paradigma de la música. Entonces, pues bueno, mucha gente empezó a voltear a ver como bandas alternativas, y pues bueno, eso también fue algo que ayudó tanto a Fu Manchu, Caius, pues bueno, otras bandas por ahí. Dice que también Virulence, pues bueno, ya estaba medio tronado, ya había gente que se había ido de la banda, otros llegaron, y así es como nace Fu Manchu, así nace este proyecto Fu Manchu. Bueno, estaba Mark, estaba Scott, y bueno, por supuesto Rubén, y pues bueno, cambiaron de integrantes. Al final como que pues dijeron, bueno, como que pues esto ya no estaba funcionando, vamos a hacer una nueva banda. Así nace pues el Fu Manchu, ¿no? Que bueno, ahí tocó Rubén varios discos, los primeros dos, y bueno, algunos demos, algunos EPs que salieron por ahí en 7 pulgadas. Y pues bueno, se acuerda mucho que estaban en un bar tocando, y de repente pues nadie entendía nada, y había un viejo borracho al fondo, y decía, yeah, y dice, alguna vez fui joven, y le recordaba como a pues estas bandas, ¿no? De antaño, el Jimi Hendrix, el Led Zeppelin, a todas estas bandas de hard rock. Y dice pues que era muy curioso eso, pero pues bueno, como que les agüitaba, pero al mismo tiempo los inspiraba, ¿no? Porque sabía que estaban haciendo algo chido, y como les mencionamos, pues bueno, les tomó bastante tiempo, pero al final crearon su propio sonido, y eso vale mucho la pena. Dice que fue como difícil en un principio, pero cuando tuvieron como su identidad, sabían que tenían algo especial, y eso es lo más difícil para una banda, tener una identidad, crear un sonido propio, y sin importar pues que te digan que eres un raro, no un freak. Y pues bueno, también después de Fu Manchu hizo Nebula. Y le preguntamos cómo conoció a Eddie Glass, cómo se formó Nebula. Y dice, pues, nuevamente, Mark Upshire es la clave de toda esta novela, si lo quiere ver de esa forma. Entonces, pues dice que Mark siempre fue una persona de vanguardia. Él ha tratado de apoyar a toda la gente, y dice que él recuerda que fue la primera persona que tuvo un mohawk en la prepa. Y pues bueno, también tuvo el pelo ahí pintado, y pues era como el chico cool, era alguien que tú admirabas y que respetabas mucho. Y él le presentó a Eddie Glass, y pues bueno, le dijeron como a Scott Hill, así de, hey, pues deberíamos de tener un guitarrista más, a lo mejor eso puede ayudarnos. Dice que como que hay una onda, como que Eddie y la personalidad de Eddie y la de Scott como que no embonaban. Entonces pues uno era más explosivo, el otro era como más, pues ya saben, hippie, rifero. Entonces, pues bueno, al final como que no tenían de llevarse tan bien, hicieron un disco, y pues bueno, se separó Fu Manchu, se dividió Fu Manchu, y pues bueno, Rubén, Eddie y Mark, pues bueno, tomaron caminos separados y formaron Nebula. era como, unos querían tocar como más pesado, más tendido, otros mucho más lento, más hippie, más psicodélico. Y pues bueno, dice que fue muy difícil dejar Fu Manchu porque era lo que conocían, era prácticamente la banda grande que tenían y sintieron muy feo, pero dice que las cosas pasan por algo, por algún motivo, pues tuvo que pasar esto para que naciera Nebula. Y pues bueno, Nebula es una de mis bandas favoritas, no tiene usted idea cuánto amo esta banda. Y pues bueno, así nace el proyecto. Dice que, bueno, le pregunté también sobre ese tour que tuvieron con los Natas en Argentina y que cómo pasó esto. Dice que, pues bueno, los Natas y sus giras en Europa, pues bueno, después de que Fu Manchu se separara, pues ellos no pararon, hicieron Nebula, empezaron a tocar, se fueron al Rancho de la Luna y ahí crearon o compusieron el Let It Burn. Y pues bueno, también sacaron este split con Lowrider, esta banda sueca que ya hemos tenido por acá, a Peter. Y pues al final como que se movieron mucho, andaban tocando puertas, decían que sí a todo, que iban a tocar donde los invitaran. Y al final, pues bueno, dieron con un booking agent bastante bueno. Y este booking los ayudó a poder firmar y hacer tours en Estados Unidos y en Europa. Y también firmaron con Zero Hour, este disco, este sello los ayudó. Y se supone que no tenía que pasar eso, pero pasó. Al final el label les dio un budget y se fueron con Jack Endino, este productor famosísimo. Y pues bueno, era conocido de Eddie Glass, y porque Eddie tuvo una banda con O, que justo acaba de fallecer hace poco, personaje clave de la escena. Y bueno, ellos tuvieron una banda, entonces pues Eddie tenía una cierta conexión ahí gracias a O, y pudieron adentrarse a Sub Pop Records, y Sub Pop los ayudó muchísimo. Dice que gracias a Sub Pop pudieron conocer a Mudhoney, y bueno, Mudhoney fueron sus mentores, les enseñaron todo lo que tenía que ver con el negocio, los llevaron de tour. Y una vez Mudhoney estaba en Brasil y el promotor le preguntó como, oye, ¿qué otra banda está chida que me recomiendes? Y Mudhoney dijo, trae a Nebula, ¿no? Entonces pues prácticamente Mudhoney recomendó a Nebula, y Nebula fue la banda que llegó hacia Sudamérica. Entonces pues dice que para todo esto él estaba en Los Ángeles. Y un día recibió una llamada de un amigo, le dijo, hay una banda aquí, pues que ahorró mucho dinero, están haciendo un disco aquí en Los Ángeles, son de Argentina y se llaman Los Natas, quería ver si podías, pues, cotorrear con ellos, pasarla bien, y se no tiene dónde quedarse. Y él dijo, pues se pueden quedar en mi casa, no hay ningún problema. Y pues bueno, los Natas estaban con Dale Crover de los Melvins grabando El Ciudad de Brahman, un disco emblemático que cambió la historia del rock argentino, el stoner latinoamericano. En ese momento no lo sabían, Rubén no lo sabía, pero estaban creando algo muy especial. Pero bueno, los Natas estaban ahí. De repente pues hace esta conexión de que Nebula iba a ir a Sudamérica, contactan a los Natas, se hicieron buenos amigos y bueno, giraron juntos en Europa y en Sudamérica. Dice que tuvieron mucha suerte con Nebula, fueron a Estados Unidos, a Australia, a Japón, a Europa, a Sudamérica. Ellos le decían que sí a todo, prácticamente nunca pararon, era lo que querían hacer, tocar buena música, riffs psicodélicos, pesados, viajados. Y la verdad, a título personal, Nebula le dio mucho a esta industria. Hace unos días salió una noticia que me dio un shock prácticamente. Tom Davis, que bueno, fue después de esta alineación, tocó el bajo en Nebula, pues bueno, tiene ahí leucemia, fue diagnosticado con esta enfermedad. Así que pues bueno, aprovechando el especial que estamos haciendo aquí, pues bueno, vayan al GoFundMe de Tom Davis y bueno, ahí pueden donar, pueden ayudar a Tom, y pues bueno, también pueden ayudar a que continúe el legado de Nebula. Mark acaba de ser anunciado para regresar a Nebula en esta gira europea, entonces Eddie y Mark van a regresar a Nebula. Ruben no, Ruben está ahora con The Freaks. Y bueno, vamos a platicar de los Freaks ahora en el bloque que sigue. Mientras tanto, los dejamos con Nebula. Disfrute esto aquí en Doom and Stone. Préndase, sáquese algo. Felices viajes.
I know you're This is Tommy from Dozer in Greenleaf, and you're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America. Stay heavy.
Yes, definitely. And you create something special with all these bands, and years later, a new generation discovered these sounds, and the scene grow. And man, thanks so much for never quit and continue creating music. I mean, you're a big inspiration. And talking about inspiration, in 2008, you released the first album of the Freaks, this new project, and now is your main project. So tell us about this band, the Freaks.
Well, it did start off just as a fun project, and at the same time, it was coming to a point where, Caius was getting really popular. Fu Manchu was getting really popular. Nebula had a good run, and everyone's always kind of pulling from Black Sabbath and stuff. And, I mentioned earlier how now everybody's sounding the same and stuff, So the whole project to start off was, let's do something completely different. And if it comes out terrible, big deal. If it comes out good, awesome. But let's just kind of do a big blind taste test, And so it was just for fun, to tell you the truth, And to tell you the truth, when I hear that first record after the fact, I'm like, yeah, what were we thinking? Like, oh my gosh, because you get I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but I get a full cringe factor when I hear things I've done in the past. It happens to me when I listen to Fu Manchu. It happens to me when I listen to Nebula. It happens to me when I listen to the Freaks, with Tom. I'm like, oh my God, man, that sounded so terrible. I could have played it so much better. Or like, why do we do that? I mean, I wonder if like other people experience that, you are your own worst critic. And I'm so critical of myself, to where sometimes I'm like, but it is what it is, and you move forward, So the Freaks really just started out as a project. I met all these cool, fun people throughout the travels, both with Fu Manchu and Nebula, and I've always kept my contacts with them. I'm still friends with a lot of people to this day. So that's how it was like, hey, then, I just, let me throw you something, and then I don't care what you do, just throw something on there and it won't be omitted. Whatever you put on there, we'll keep on there, and we'll just see where it takes us, And that was the idea of that first record. But then it turned into something different because, I mean, I had John McBain with me there, and I had Scott Reeder with me there, and so I was thinking like, okay, man, these guys are going to really jump in and do stuff with me, but they were more like, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do it, you're going to do it all. And then we might sprinkle stuff on top of it. And then, because I had hired John to kind of produce it, and I hired Scott to engineer it, and they took that as face value. So when I went in there thinking we were all going to start jamming together, they were like, no, you have your songs, you're going to record them, you're going to play drums, you're going to play bass, you're going to play guitar, you're going to do everything. And then we send it out to the people to do their stuff, and then we'll sprinkle a little bit of stuff on top of it, So it didn't exactly work out the way I kind of was hoping. And hearing back on it, it's like, there's some pretty weird stuff we did on there. But again, like I said, it was just fun. It was just a project. And then after that, we released it on Cargo Germany, and the label was like, well, now can you put together a band to come down and play this stuff, And I was like, oh man, I wasn't expecting that. I was just trying to do a fun project. And so I had to then build a band together, and again, I reach into my pool, my bag of friends, and I'm like, hey, Carl, hey, Andy from Zen Gorilla, would you guys be available to, be a rhythm section on a European tour? Yeah, we'll do it, man, and hey, Isaiah Mitchell used to play bass a little bit for Nebula, so I became good friends with Isaiah. And so I go, hey, Isaiah, you want to come out and play guitar on this little thing? And Isaiah was like, yeah. So, all of a sudden I had this super group behind me, I mean, it was insane. And they made the song sound so much better live, and I was still green. I went from playing drums to guitar, and, I didn't really know how to play guitar. I was the worst one in my own band. So, you know, so that was fun, and then we came back, and of course, I mean, that was like two guys lived in San Francisco, one guy lived in Seattle, one guy lived in San Diego, I lived in LA, and it was just too much to kind of that dream band to stay as a band because everybody was just so separated. And so I kind of just, let it kind of slow down. But I never stopped, dude. So I'm always in the garage tracking demos and all that kind of stuff. And then finally I had enough material for something new. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to make this into a thing, I got to find local players. And that's when I met up with Jonathan Hall. He used to be in a band called Backbiter, and Fu Manchu used to play with Backbiter all the time, and I remember kind of getting drunk with Jonathan and jokingly saying, well, there's going to be a time when me and you are going to be in a band together, man. And now we are. So it's kind of, was prophetic. And yeah, so it turned into now I have a local band, and then it turned into like, this is great because it's more for like just socializing, like I have my day job. I go to my work, I have my family. I take care of my family. And, being social isn't so easy anymore. So kind of having the band be local, it was like, okay, cool, man. Like once a week, twice a week, I get to hang out with my bros and make music and then go home and take care of life and then come back next week and jam. And that's kind of how it just kind of formed into something more solid. It was more so being able to hang out with friends, and it was we're gonna have a band, we're gonna start touring, we're gonna start making records. It was more just friends getting together, and well, we produce stuff. So I guess I'm pretty lucky with how it turned out. And right now the band is at its peak as far as I'm concerned. I said, hey, you know what? I play guitar, I tried, I took the challenge. It's fun having a challenge, but our drummer at the time broke his leg, and when he broke his leg, I think it was his leg. Yeah, I think it was his leg or his arm. He broke a bone, and I was, we were in the middle of recording some demos, so I just went ahead and did drums, and finally realized, like, why am I not back here? I'm so much more comfortable playing drums than I am trying to play guitar and trying to be this front man or whatever, So, it just kind of fell back into place, and I was like, well, you recover, Bob. I'm just going to take over and play drums because I'm having a good time doing it. And we have a new frontman singer, who's never been in a band before, but the guy is amazing. He's totally awesome. So right now it's exciting because it's like a whole new rebirth, of this band. But we have the brand, so we decided to kind of just, be a brand new band with an old name, and we just continued on. So I'm really stoked, man. I'm really stoked with this new lineup of the Freaks. I'm hoping it can really see some more action the same way Fu Manchu Nebula was able to see action as far as playing out. So I'm pretty happy right now. I'm feeling good.
Something
from the Freaks. You're listening to Doomed and Stoned Latino America.
Para llevarles a ustedes la machaca, la maciza, concisa. Y pues bueno, le preguntamos ahora sobre los Freaks, ya entrando en materia, esta última banda, el proyecto principal que tiene Rubén actualmente. Y pues bueno, dice que fue un proyecto que empezó como algo solista, pero pues bueno, poco a poco fue cambiando. Dice que quería alejarse un poco del sonido clásico de Fu Manchu, Nebula. Entonces pues lo hizo primero por diversión, dice que él quería grabar algo y pues bueno, dice pues vamos a ver qué sale, ¿no? Pero cuando escuchó el disco fue como, no sé si esto funcione, sé que es muy duro, es un duro crítico de sí mismo y que a veces eso le pesa, que no sabe si a todo mundo le pasa, pero él, bueno, es un juez muy, muy duro. Y pues bueno, le vamos a echar acá unos nombres para que usted se cuadre de quién ha pasado por The Freaks. Ha estado ni más ni menos que John McBain de Monster Magnet, Scott Reeder de Caius, Isaiah Mitchell de Airless, Lorenzo Woodrose de Baby Woodrose, Jason Corbin, también ha estado el John Covet, que es de Ludica, el Jack Endino, pues bueno, gran productor, Skin Yard, Earthworm, Bernie Worrell, que también estuvo con Parliament, con Funkadelic. Bueno, ha pasado mucha gente por esta banda para que usted se vaya cuadrando y pues bueno, vaya topando la calidad de proyecto. Y pues bueno, también dice que pues al final de cuentas este proyecto también era de amigos, así que pues bueno, para el siguiente disco tuvo por ahí a John Hill, también estuvo el Tom Davis y pues bueno, Scott Reeder también les tiró esquina. Entonces pues dice que él mandaba la música y pues bueno, la iban ahí armando entre todos poco a poco. Dice que al final de cuentas se dio, pues como que reaccionó y dijo, wow, tengo un super grupo aquí en mis manos, así que pues bueno, cuando se dio cuenta, pues bueno, la disquera en la que estaban les pidió como hacer un tour. Dice Rubén que entonces pues tuvo que armarse una banda y pues bueno, así es como The Freaks empezó a tocar en vivo y a girar, sobre todo en Europa. Y pues bueno, dice que estaba muy loco, que porque en este supergrupo él empezó a tocar la guitarra, decía, bueno, era el peor de mi banda, él, teniendo a todos estos músicos, él sentía como muy, pues ya saben, como que no era el más apto, pero pues bueno, claro que todos son unas leyendas, o sea, imagínense que una leyenda diga eso, pues híjole, qué cosas, ¿no? Pero bueno, dice que uno de los mayores problemas en The Freaks es que todo el mundo vivía lejos. Uno estaba en Seattle, otros en San Diego, Los Ángeles y San Francisco, así que pues bueno, tuvo que parar un poco la banda, los ensayos y pues bueno, se fue a su garage, estuvo ahí trabajando, estuvo componiendo y se armó una banda local. Entonces con esta banda local empezaron a cotorrear y se dio cuenta que The Freaks, más allá de ser una banda seria, o sea, sí es una banda seria, pero es una excusa para socializar, es hacer jams entre amigos, pasarla bien. Dice que él ahora tiene su familia, su trabajo y este tiempo que tiene con la música lo aprovecha lo más que pueda. Así que The Freaks es eso, amistad y pues bueno, crear comunidad. Y pues bueno, la pregunta que sigue son sobre los planes que tiene a futuro. Y pues bueno, sobre esto Robin nos dice que bueno, él va a volver a tocar la batería, que desafortunadamente su baterista se rompió el pie y bueno, tuvo que entrar al quite y de repente dijo, pues está bueno la bataca, ¿no? Como que hay que seguir por esos rumbos. Y pues bueno, va a estar nuevamente tocando la batería. Ahora tiene un nuevo cantante y siente que es un renacer de la banda. The Freaks siempre es eso, es algo para amigos, está en constante cambio. Y dice que como fue con Nebula y con Fu Manchu, están dispuestos a todo, sí, a la acción en definitiva. Y pues siempre han querido venir a México, a Sudamérica. Dice que hablaba con Sergio Cher-Surian de los Natas para poder ir y pues bueno, le encantaría, pero ahora sus planes están enfocados en ir a Australia. Van a sacar un split con una banda que se llama Robot God, que está muy buena, de psicodelia por ahí. Va a salir con Cosmic Artifacts y pronto van a anunciar este split, así que seguramente The Freaks va a estar en Australia si todo va bien. Y también ya tienen un EP nuevo, que completito, dice que ya está grabado, está en el proceso de mezcla, de master. Y pues bueno, van a regresar al camino y dice, hay que trabajar muy duro porque el futuro es ahora, no hay nada más, hay que aprovecharlo. Y pues las palabras finales del maestro Ruben Romano, dice que muchas gracias a todos, gracias por darle este honor, gracias por escuchar su música y se siente muy bien de ser parte de los pioneros. Él dice como parte de los cimientos de la fundación, del foundation, los cimientos. Dice que muchas gracias por darles, por nosotros como fanáticos darles todo y por darles el reconocimiento, y que se siente muy agradecido de ser parte de su movimiento, y pues bueno, que el rock and roll nunca pare. Así que pues bueno, vamos a escuchar esta última parte de los planes, las palabras finales del maestro Ruben Romano. Así que espero disfrute esto. Muchas gracias por habernos acompañado en este especial aquí en Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Prometemos volver a platicar con el maestro Ruben Romano. La verdad es que no nos adentramos mucho en Fu Manchu, tampoco a Nebula, nos faltó mucho tiempo, pero esperemos que esta sea la primera parte y que les permita tener un panorama general de quién es Ruben Romano y su importancia en el mundo del stoner rock, de la música en general. Gracias Rubén, gracias Nebula, Fu Manchu, Virulence, The Freaks, por toda la música que nos han dado, les debemos mucho. Y bueno, por supuesto, nos escuchamos muy pronto en un nuevo episodio. Ya se la sabe, préndase, sáquese algo, gócela.
Hola, soy Cobra Rod, bajista y miembro fundador de Poseidótica desde Argentina, y están escuchando Doom and Stone Latinoamérica. Un saludo para toda la gente del continente.
Oh, that's really cool. And well, the question is, do you have plans to record a new album? Maybe a small tour, Mexico, maybe?
Roman, I would love to get down to Mexico, and I've always made inquiries with Sergio from Nadas. I'm like, hey, how are things back down in Argentina, man? Like, would it be viable to try and put something together to get down there? I mean, I'm right now trying to figure something out for Australia, because we have a split that's coming out on Cosmic Artifacts with an Australian band called Robot God. So it makes me think, well,
oh, nice.
Yeah, something like, okay, well, Robot God's from Australia. Maybe we can, we have the split coming out together. Maybe we could get down to Australia and support this split together and do some stuff together. So I'm always looking for the next thing, Roman. And if Mexico City could be a part of that, I'd love it. Of course, like I said, I always say yes to that kind of stuff. I never say no.
Yes.
But we do have that split that should be being announced as released very shortly, because the test pressings have been approved and sent back to the pressing plant. So now it's just a waiting game still, but just I know the wait's a lot shorter than it used to be. And we also have enough for a full LP it's already recorded, and we're just kind of working on a mix and going to get it mastered. So I'm hoping that will get done really quick. So we do have stuff that's on the verge of being pushed to give us some foundation to get back on the road and start doing what we were doing back then. Now the future is now.
Yeah, you're right. So, Ruben, we left just 4 minutes for this interview. Okay. Sorry for that. So, some final words for the audience here in Mexico or Latin America?
I just gotta say, thank you for everything. I mean, the bands that I was in are still running so strong, and it makes me feel good that I was a foundation for that. It feels good to have, well, on my personal resume, Fu Manchu, Nebula, and now the Freaks. But, it doesn't really mean anything unless people really dig it, and people have been digging it for a long time. So thank you for that. I'm very happy to be a part of it. I'm very happy that people really still dig it the way they do, and that it's turned into what it's turned into. So, muchas gracias a todos, con mucho amor.
Thank you so much. And well, at name of the whole community, I want to say thanks to you because you never get up, and man, your music is a big inspiration. All these bands, Fu Manchu, Nebula, the Freaks, I mean, you are the godfathers of this movement. So thank you so much for never quit, and again, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, I live for the adventure. Thank you, Roman. It's awesome to finally meet you.
Latinoamérica, soy Sergio Chosurian y estás escuchando Doomed and Stoned Latinoamérica.